The story of Judas is the story of man betraying the trust of God in the Christ of God. When the children of God did not know why they attached a name to Christ, it is because they did not see what God showed them. It was the way that man, wanting to be God, assigned Christ to himself. And so when the children said Christ as Lord, they did not understand that God was telling them that Christ is the way God had shown them. That when they worked in the divine and sacred order of God, they were able to achieve the highest consciousness of God that had enabled them to know the mysteries of God hidden in the wisdom of God. There are many things that God did not share with the children because the children did not walk in the faith of God, nor did they keep the trust of God to them. And they did not know why it is. They did not go on and on and on in the eternal light that was within Christ. For they lost the knowledge of that which was known to them, and they followed the wayward ways of a world that had violated the way in which the divine order of God was given to man and the world. Man's violation of God's divine order took man and the world in the perishing and decaying way. And no man understands why it is that his world goes into turmoil, that it will end, that he grows old, weak, and weary, and ends, and that in all the ways that he sojourned on earth, he was never able to establish where the kingdom of God is, nor where it is that he exists within that kingdom. And no one would have known these things, because your God did not share it with man. God always shows man when there are things that are precious of you. You know that in every way that you would share it, you would share it with those who would keep faith with you, who you can trust, and who you know would never violate what it is that you had shared with them. And God taught the children, whenever they were growing up, that every way that they must say things to them that are secret to them, they must make an oath between themselves. And God said all the children in all the lands did it. They made an oath between themselves that they would keep inviolable in their hearts that which was shared. You don't do anything in this world that God has not given to be known. And you can't do anything in this world except God give it to be done. And so in all the ways that God wanted man to understand that God is the giver of all things, God wanted man to know that hidden in all things are the mysteries of God that carry the wisdom of God that is hidden for man. To walk the way of the flesh is to walk the way of darkness. For the flesh is an illusion created by its source, so that man would come to know that the things that he pursues in the visible world are only reflections of the invisible. We have taught you that man was first created in spirit, and spirit manifested man in the seen way. What is spirit? Every man says the spirit, but no man can explain what is the spirit. The children were taught that the spirit is God, and the spirit is God. But who or what is God? Who or what is God? We say always unto you that through us to you and you to the children, the truth will be known in the end. For all the things that are God are the things that are known as ether. Ether is unseen by man, cannot be seen by man, because ether carries that which is of the highest divinity. And because man's projection from ether to nether is that which is of a lowly state, man is unable to comprehend that which exists in the higher realm of a higher consciousness. And that is why man cannot understand who he is, nor why it is he is able to do the things he does. For his projected self is only a manifestation of what ether can do. And when ether is all that which exists that is God, it is the way in which man sees in all the manifestations of all visible things, all that which exists as illimitable possibilities that come from ether. So when man calls on God and God and God and God and God, he really doesn't know who or what he's calling on. And he didn't know, he couldn't know, because he did not wait to be taught how it is that everything that he calls creation came into being, why it came into being, how it came into being, and why it exists the way it exists, and why it always works in the precise order in which it is given. If you know yourself, you will come to the realization that everything hidden within you needs not you to tell it how to work. It does not need you to tell it how to work. It works independent of you because it is designed in divine order to work exactly the way in which it must work. When God giveth man that he must produce from himself a seen thing, God shows man that every way that he had created it from God in him, it worked in precisely the order that he wanted it to work in. It did exactly what he wanted it to do. So that when man would have come to notice that what he produced from his unseen that became seen worked in the way in which it was intended to work, he would recognize that he as a seen entity comes from an unseen entity that directs the way in which all things must be. So that in knowing these things, man will come to recognize that his visible self is really an imitation of a self that exists greater than it. And when your greater self is that which is of unseen ether, it shows you that within you there are the same possibilities that exist in everyone else, because everyone else has the same ether. You see, God knew that this whole world was lost, that man was in darkness, and that man was always going to change and decay. Because without the true knowledge of who you are and how it is that you exist as God incarnate, you will never be able to know the truth. And the truth is that you are God as an extension of God existing on the lower plane of consciousness that always works towards its own ending. Love, God says to you, is the key to all the mysteries of God. But man does not know what love is. For in walking the way of the flesh, he walketh not in the love of God. And every way that man lusted in the flesh, he assumed that he loved in God. The love of God is the embracing of all of God's creation in the oneness of God, recognizing that everything that exists in God as God works always to the glory of God. Pursuing seen things took man further and further away from the love of God. For all that he saw was all that which God told man made him vainglorious. And in the vainglorious way, every man found the way to Hades. Every man found the way to Hades. Because Hades represents every pain, suffering, and impediment that man experiences in this journey that he began. Because God did not give man any of these things. God did not give man any of these things. Altering the divine order of God produced Hades, a hell on earth. And everywhere man looks around the world, today, yesterday, the day before, and God says to you, there's only one day. There's only one day, and that is the day of the Lord. In the fragmented consciousness of man, in the broken covenants with God, everything became fragmented. So this day of the Lord thy God become Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, for all the same day but broken up. All the same day but broken up. Because God created everything in the oneness of the continuity of all things. So you see, everything that God showed man that he experiences in this life comes from all the ways in which he broke the sacred and divine order of God, the covenant with God, the sacred and divine laws of God. And so he ended up in a broken world with a broken life. Everything became broken. And man eventually becomes broken. No one was given to teach these things because God told the whole world the time would come when God would send unto you deliverers, and these deliverers shall say to you the things God gave them to say. That in teaching you the things that you are given to know, you will come to the recognition that you too were lost. You too found yourself in the wilderness of despair. There is despair in the world today because God shows man that every way that he came and left and did all manner of things that are an abomination unto God, these things will return back to man. So in all of today's world, God tells man his harvest has come. There was nothing that God told man that wasn't the truth. The day will come when you will all reap what you have sowed. And the harvest time has come. To you we say, let the children know God did not send these plagues and pestilences, and God does not send the increasing plague and pestilences and calamities to hurt and destroy them. When we send it to some of the lands of the children of God, it is because God saw what they did in the many lives that they lived. And many of them betrayed the children of God to the tribes of earth because man has no memory of what he did. Know how many times he came and left. He doesn't know what God would return to him. So God says, you tell them, when you all see these things happening, know ye that it is God saying to them, you are now reaping what you have sowed. For every way they did the many things to the children that caused the children to suffer, so will they suffer. And we said to you, there are many in the lands of the Caribbean and in parts of Africa that God has already marked for destruction. And God knows all the ways to show everyone why God told them God is never a respecter of persons. And when God saw what they were doing, God spoke to them. Are you sure this is what you want to do? Are you sure this is what you want to do? God gives it in the consciousness of man. Whenever he's going to do something that he ought not to do, that he must question himself. And God said, God asked him, are you sure this is what you want to do? And so we sent you, that the truth will be known to the children, that there are some of the children of God that will never, never enter the kingdom of God. For those that witness what God shows them, let them know that God is no respecter of anyone, and that God knows the way to say to everyone, turn away from the ways that you go.